y'all got me out here agreeing with Hasan Piker, so my two middle kids are going to clip that and play it on a loop for me. They're going to make it my ringtone.
For J.D. Vance or Gavin Newsom.
Well, I'd have to vote for Gavin Newsom,
Me
of course,
too.
100%.
I wouldn't blink.
No
What
doubt.
about you, Hasan?
I'd probably vote third party.
You would?
Oh, yeah. I mean, at that point, it doesn't even matter. Like, because my policy on this is the same as, like, my refusal to endorse Kamala Harris.
Because, like, why are we doing this? Why are we putting forth this scenario where it's J.D. Vance versus Gavin fucking Newsom? Gavin Newsom. Why is any pundit or podcaster, anybody putting forth that lineup as if that's what's going to happen in 2020? Why are we talking about 2028 at all? We have a fight to defend democracy coming up in the midterms. We need to have our eyes on the fucking midterms to make sure that we vote for pro-democracy candidates, right, who are actually going to be our allies in the fight to thwart the authoritarians and create a stable government that works for working class people. We have to have a massive get out the vote movement, but we have to make sure that we are voting for candidates who are going to be allies in the fight for democracy. And then we have to make sure that the results of the election are upheld and that duly elected members of Congress are sworn in and seated. We have all of that in front of us. So why the fuck are we talking about the 2028 elections? I mean, I understand that it is trying to set this expectation in the mind of the electorate, in the mind of the Democratic electorate, that, like, if you want to defeat the fascists, you've got to vote for a neoliberal, pro-capitalist white dude who, you know, loves the billionaires and loves to throw homeless people under the bus. Honestly, it's the same way that fucking octogenarian James Carville has been quoted all over the press in the last week saying that we have to vote for J.D. Pritzker for 2028, another billionaire. The establishment wants to put forward neoliberal white dudes as the only option. We got to pick them or else we're fucked and we're going to get fascism. We have to focus on the midterms. We have to focus on the midterms. The midterms are an inflection point where a would-be authoritarian is desperate to cement his power, where the Republicans are desperate to completely dismantle democracy. It is going to be, as Dr. Erica Chenoweth says, difficult for us to regain a democracy after the midterms if we fail to defend free and fair elections. Not that it will be impossible, but it will be much more difficult. But I'm totally with Hasan on this. And I am somebody who's like, in the general election, when it comes to a literal fascist or a Democrat who's not going to give you everything that you want, we got to work with the pieces that are on the board. And if those are the two pieces on the board, then fuck, I guess we got to vote for that guy. But why are we pretending at this point in time in 2026 that the only pieces we the people will place on the board are a literal fascist or a neoliberal who's going to fucking suck? Don't get me started on Gavin Newsom. If I have to vote for that motherfucker, I will. I voted for Hillary Clinton, okay? And now cue all the fellow middle-aged white women who are mad at me that I don't like Hillary Clinton and never have. But I voted for her. One of the things that we've been talking about in Indivisible is how the way that we push the party to the left, the way that we push the party to actually defend the American people, to actually be a comprehensive opposition party, because Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer and the DNC and the DCCC, they're not working in our best interest. They're still trying to preserve this system that has created this nightmare that we're all living in because they benefit from that system, right? Ezra Levin from Indivisible said that he has a big tent, but there's no room for cowards under that tent. Chuck Schumer and the Surrender Dems have shown us time and time again they are not our allies in the fight against fascism. And so Indivisible has decided to start endorsing primary challengers to some of these corporate establishment Democrats who are taking money from AIPAC and big crypto, who are voting for the Lake and Riley Act and are signing on to a letter thanking ICE in safely blue districts where you know a Democrat is going to win. That is where you have the power and the leverage to be able to push the party much farther to the left so that you change the majority within the party and then they elect different leadership. I know that feels slow and cumbersome, but that is a place that we the people have so much power. Now, Indivisible leadership doesn't decide to endorse a primary challenger. What happens is that the local Indivisible groups in that district, they decide, they vote, the people vote. This is a grassroots org. The people vote to endorse a primary challenger. And then they recommend that to the national level. And the national level comes back and asks all of the Indivisible groups in that district, hey, how do you feel about this? And if they get a super majority of people wanting to endorse the primary challenger, then Indivisible will go ahead on their behalf and will endorse that candidate. So they have done that for 3 different races. One of those is Minnesota, where the Minnesota Indivisible Alliance has endorsed Peggy Flanagan, who is currently the lieutenant governor running for the Senate. Peggy Flanagan, an Indigenous progressive who has the support of the labor unions, the nurses unions. Elizabeth Warren has endorsed her. She's running against Angie Craig, who is backed by who? Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer is fundraising for her. She voted for the Lake and Riley Act. She signed on to the letter thanking ICE. The corporate Democratic establishment, Chuck Schumer, the DCCC, they want Angie Craig. The people, they want Peggy Flanagan. The second race that Indivisible has endorsed a primary challenger is New York 10. That is where Brad Lander, do you remember last year, he was walking immigrants to immigration court to prevent them from being abducted by ICE. And he was accosted and arrested. And then he immediately went back to showing up to walk immigrants to their hearings. Folks in New York 10 are saying Brad Lander's a real one. We want to support him as a primary challenger against Dan Goldman, who is an extremely wealthy New Yorker who takes money from big crypto. Dan Goldman refused to endorse Zoran Mamdani, but then we're not supposed to criticize him because that's being divisive and that's infighting. He would not endorse the Democratic nominee for the mayor of New York when he is a representative from New York. Is that because AIPAC didn't want him to? Is that because the billionaires didn't want him to? The third race is Georgia 13, where Jasmine Clark is running against, I think it's David Scott. I have to look it up to make sure, but I think it's David Scott, who's been in the House for 20 years, does not vote in elections. Not only did he also sign on to the letter thanking ICE, he broke with the Democrats to vote for ICE funding. If you're in Georgia, especially Georgia 13, the Indivisibles there are asking you to support Jasmine Clark as the primary challenger. And it's amazing how Blue MAGA comes out of the woodwork to defend corporate establishment Democrats and make it sound like a vigorous primary season is just infighting rather than a normal part of the democratic process. This is supposed to be a representative democracy. Primary challengers are good and healthy. It is not a good thing for democracy when a candidate runs unchallenged, especially when they are a corporate establishment incumbent who is entrenched and has Chuck Schumer fundraising for them. That's how we get more of the surrender Dems. That's how we get more of this nightmare being prolonged, how we have a lack of a coherent opposition party in Congress. And we have a chance now in the midterms to make some real changes to shift the balance of power. But I keep seeing how many of them are DNC bots. I don't know. I keep seeing corporate establishment, Blue MAGA types being like, this is infighting. No, we got to get behind the Democrats who take money from AIPAC and big crypto. We got to support all of them. Don't criticize. Now is not the time to criticize or push your electeds. The primary season is the time to be pushing your electeds. Hey, surrender Dems up for re-election. We're watching what you do with this DHS funding package. We're watching whether or not you fold this time around. You want to get votes from people in the primary. You don't want a primary challenger. You want to be able to actually make it to the general election. You better not fuck up if you're sitting in Congress right now. We're watching you. Please understand healthy, vigorous primary seasons, that has multiple benefits for us. In permaculture, we say stacking functions. You get multiple yields out of one action. We have the opportunity to push for grassroots candidates who push the party to the left, but also folks who are in office right now who will face vigorous primary challenges. They are much more likely to listen to their constituents rather than prioritizing the dark money that runs them if they think they might not make it through the primary season. We, the electorate, have the power, and establishment Democrats don't want us to think that we have any power in the primaries, or they want us to think that exercising our power in the primaries is infighting and unhealthy. No, it's super, super healthy. This is how democracy works. When you look at what Hasan Piker said, I mean, maybe I'm off base with my interpretation here, but I saw him as saying like, you're going to throw this ridiculous matchup at me and make me choose? Like, fine, then I'll just pick third party because I'm not going to play your game, right? That is the answer I would have had. I'm not playing this fucking game. I am not going to be content with a scenario in which it is JD Vance versus Gavin Newsom or JD Vance versus JB Pritzker. Like, why are we even entertaining that? I'm not fucking playing your game. It's bullshit to talk about 2028 general election scenarios. We need to be focusing on the midterms and then a healthy, vigorous presidential primary season. I would have answered the same way Hasan answered, as a like, fuck you to this whole scenario. Y'all know that I'm not going to throw away my vote in an actual general election, but I'm also not willing to reinforce the narrative from the Democratic neoliberal establishment that we are going to end up with Gavin Newsom on the ticket for 2028. I'm not letting them set that expectation at all. And neither was Hasan. And I think that's perfectly appropriate for him to do.